Hello, class. Welcome to session 9. And I bet that you've already anticipated this as you have been looking at your checklist. And so we know that Miss and I really thinks that revision is an important process in writing. And so at this point in time, you have drafted your whole story. You've thought about refrains and adding those into your story. And now let's get into the real meat of revision. So some students think you draft your whole piece and then you revise your whole piece. And in some sense, we kind of have drafted our whole piece. And I'm not saying that your writing isn't great right now, but we all know that the best writers in the world don't publish after their first draft or second or even 100th draft. Now, I'm not going to make you make 100 drafts, but I am going to ask you that now that we're at this point to do some deep revisions. Because the truth is that serious writers revise early and use early revisions to lift the level of what they've already written. So let's get started. So we can do a step 1 of revision, and it could be focusing on the narration of the story, looking to see if you can add narration either at the beginning of the story or in between scenes to stitch the small moments. So I'm going to show you a student's example of narration in the beginning of the story. And this story is called The Three Moles and a Hedgehog. There were 3 moles who lived underneath the ground of a field of grass, and eventually the humans took over. That caused the moles' home to be destroyed. The moles got very upset. What I love about this narration right in the beginning is that it totally puts you right into the setting, right into the problem. And that's what strong narration does. It doesn't just tell you about the past, it brings you right to where the story is going to begin. Let's look at a different way that you can revise now. You can also relook at your ending. Does it solve the main character's problems? If not, you need to go back and revise and think about how you can wrap up the story to also teach a lesson. So here is the ending of that very story. "Then off with you," said the hedgehog. And so the mole scurried through the hedge to eat some worms. Now the hedgehog was very angry. His face turned red, his quills shot up, and he was waiting to pounce on the next mole. Many hours later, the biggest mole came along slowly. I can probably figure out what the original story is. 3 billy goats gruff. "Aha! There you are! No excuses anymore. I'm going to gobble you up," said the hedgehog in a loud, angry, evil voice. The mole shrugged his shoulders and rolled his eyes. "Not before the earth gobbles you up," said the mole in a louder voice. And with that, the third mole dug a deep hole and pushed the hedgehog in. The hedgehog was never seen again, and his evilness was never remembered again. And the 3 moles became very fat and lived happily ever after. And from that day on, the moles learned to stand up to bullies, and nobody was ever afraid to enter the hedge. Now, do you guys see how, first of all, we are deep in the story? There's dialogue and there's narration. There's dialogue and then there's narration all throughout. And then we get to the end and we hear the part where it's "not before the earth gobbles you up." Then action happens. The hedgehog throws him, the hedgehog is pushed in, and the moles are now victorious. They're going to live happily ever after. But the writer also makes sure to include the lesson. And I love that the moles learn to stand up to bullies. And I think this student in particular really thought through what she wanted the readers to learn. And that's what's amazing about fairy tales. So you're going to notice that the work today is going to be more challenging than you probably anticipated, but the end result will be a really awesome piece. I'm going to show you one more way to revise. Now, you can also, I want to put myself somewhere where you can still see the information. Seems I can't put my head anywhere. A storyteller's voice shows, not tells. And if you remember very clearly when we did narrative writing in the beginning of September, we focused on this show, not tell. You know, describing the actions that took place, using dialogue, describing what we saw, smelled, tasted, or felt, and describing images around the storyteller. And you can use this chart to take a moment and revise parts of your writing. So when you're watching this video with me giving you all these tips, you can always just look at it, step one, pause it, get into your writing and do that work, and then go back to the video again and watch the next example and go back into your writing. You know, revision is something that is exciting because you can really see the before and after. And I know what your before is. You all sent me your drafts. And so at this point, I'm going to should see a big change from that original one to this one. And it's really up to you because you're the writer. Don't forget, though, to check off on your checklist today's session of session 9 after you have relooked at your ending and revise, and relooked at your narration and revise. And so then you know that tomorrow we're going into self-assessment, and you want to be at your very best writing by the end of today so that when you assess tomorrow, you can really just focus on one or two areas that you might still need to work on. Can't wait to see what you come up with and what you turn in today. Love you all. Mwah.